lonely is that dull, constant feeling that follows you around. Loneliness makes you wonder, why is this happening to me? And it can drag you into a very self-focused mental disposition. Lonely feels empty, and sometimes it comes with feelings of unworthiness. It can lead to feelings of hopelessness and helplessness and result in negative engagement with yourself, spiraling into depression, and it can have very adverse effects on health. Learning to define aloneness and loneliness and to understand that I can be alone and not lonely was one of the most freeing bits of knowledge or realization that I came to. I grew up in a very social home. We were surrounded by people constantly, and in a home like that, you can become quite dependent on those around you. But one of the important things that I realized was that I needed to deliberately look at the life of Christ and understand how he overcame loneliness. And I would venture to say that this is where I decided to press into and practice aloneness. I realized that Jesus' aloneness allowed for self-reflection, deep reading, his appreciation for nature. It built creativity. It allowed him to think. And I would venture to say that Jesus did some journaling and some writing. And although we don't have access to that, I do believe that that is part of what we can do and the disciples did in their time of loneliness and aloneness. And then last but not least, biblical meditation. My husband and I had the privilege of expanding on someone else's work with regards to biblical meditation. And that has been one of the greatest encouragements and positive actions I've been able to take, both in single times as well as during our marriage. Because, beloved, I want to say that there are alone times and there are lonely times, even in marriage. When your spouse is struggling with something like their health or with other issues that you cannot always identify with, you will find that there can be loneliness. And so, although it is not a good thing, we do understand that this happens and we need to be comfortable being alone. One of the things that I opted to do was to further my education. Ironically, when Cliff and I met, I was at the beginning of the year, I said to God, please, Lord, not this year. I just need to finish this year. And by the end of that year, we were married. But education has a very large part to play in our success overall. God's desire is for us to have knowledge and wisdom, skills, and right through from the simplest things to riding to a bicycle or learning to skate on a skateboard can be extremely empowering. Taking up a new hobby, exercising, especially in groups, like joining a running club, I, for example, opted when it came to hobbies, I wanted to learn to communicate more effectively. And although I'd grown up in the church, I was very nervous. Still, I would hold a piece of paper and tremble like a leaf in the wind. So I opted to join Toastmasters and stretch myself to actually do what they call impromptu speeches, where they give you 30 seconds to prepare as you're walking up front to give a 3-minute speech. And I can't tell you how that gave me improved skills and confidence. Many people complain and say, I don't have the resources or the funds to possibly take up new hobbies or learn new skills. And I want to say an enormous amount that you can do for free, both online and by initiating things. If you can't afford to go to events, you can set up events. And there are endless ideas on the internet. Another thing I opted to do was to travel, to gain exposure. I wasn't able to travel abroad as regularly as I wanted to, so I made it a goal for every 2 to 3 years, and God provided. I also decided to explore the area in which I lived, and that gave me an appreciation for the town and the city that I was living in. And those are probably the main areas that you would find people in the world focusing on. And that's not a bad thing. All of those things contribute to filling up your time, giving you a sense of direction because you're setting goals and you're achieving them, and growing you characterologically. But what I found possibly the most powerful was volunteering and connecting with other people to do things that I enjoyed and that would make a difference in the environment as well as for people around me. I was involved with welfare and Meals on Wheels, and then decided to expand to connect with people outside my typical family of faith comfort zone. And that began some amazing friendships. What probably made the biggest difference in my life was ministry. And I literally said to God, Lord, if Paul and Jesus could be as effective to me, I want to be as involved in ministry as possible. I made an agreement with God that if he should ever ask me to do anything, I would not say no. Prayer became a vitally important thing for me. And God showed me where my gifts lay. I completed a spiritual gifts assessment and decided to go into certain ministries that would make the greatest impact. While I was in the ministry, doing little projects constantly, I was starting to feel discouraged. Wonderful way to spell joy. Truly is a wonderful recipe for singles to experience joy and to find their place of purpose as they walk the path of singleness. Remaining single is hard. Remaining single and pure is very hard unless Christ is in it. And for that reason, as we minister, we can collaborate and we can ask others to hold us up in prayer as well as accountable. I don't know about the stigmas so much. The reality is, in the world in which we live today, there are so many diverse issues that carry a stigma, that singleness in some cultures carries more stigma than others. And that said, I believe we will explore that a lot more this evening in our panel discussions. I always joke and say that white people don't have culture. And it's not because there are no cultural practices, but there are certain cultures that the cultural practices are very negotiable and are not as deeply entrenched as in other cultures. I came to a stage and an age where I didn't really care what people thought about me being single. And God had given me the ability to recognize that I am playing to an audience of one, that what really matters is God's opinion of me. And that is a very privileged position to be in, and I never took that for granted. God blessed me and helped me through the difficult times. And I never lost hope, but I also recognized that my hope was not in marriage. My hope is in God. And on many occasions, I would say and pray, Lord, you're my husband. I need you to come through with this. And God did. As much as I'd grown up in a home where my father taught us how to do woodwork and sew and fix things, there are many things where a partner is a huge blessing. And doing things together is so much easier. But I want to encourage you to focus on your relationship with God and to seek for opportunities to volunteer and to minister to others. It is probably the greatest defense mechanism against feeling down, feeling lonely, and becoming depressed. I must just tell you, I went to the chiropractor last week for the first time in many years. And he was telling me about a 93-year-old lady who came to him and said, I'm starting to feel some pain in my bones for the first time in my life. And he said, for the first time? And he said, what on earth is your recipe? And she said, I've never been married and I've never had children. Now, I don't know if that is the reason why, but I want to say that God gives us the ability to focus on what our blessings are, to recognize that sometimes his lack of providing what we want is a protection for us. And so let us not rush into things. Many people are very excited to get on the marriage boat, despite the fact that it says Titanic on the side. Let's not become a statistic, but let's prayerfully consider how we can uplift each other in singleness, encourage each other, and encourage ourselves. I believe we're going to launch into the discussion. Sonia, thank you very much.
No, Cher, thank you so much for opening up and sharing with us so much about your experience and your life. I mean, we promised an unfiltered real talk, and your presentation did that. I didn't even know most of these things about you, and yet we've been interacting a lot on Real Talk. Maybe we need to meet up somewhere and, and have coffee and get to know each other even better. But thank you so much for sharing, for giving us that part of your experience and how you have managed to handle being single. And of course, your story ends with this, it has a happy ending, a fairy tale ending, I would say, because you meet your handsome prince and you're living happily ever after. And we praise the Lord for that has happened. We're going to get into our Q&A section now. And once again, we're just encouraging everybody, if you have a question, this is your opportunity to ask your question. You may want to direct a question towards Cher based on what she's just opened up and told us, or to any of the panelists that are here. Feel free to raise your hand. And if you want to use the audio or the video, or comment in the comment section. But Elder Mdabeti, I just want to come to you now. Cher talked about stigma, how there may be this stigma surrounding being single and how it is different for different cultures. And yes, her presentation was wonderful because she also shared some tips on what she did to occupy herself during the time that she was single. And of course, she also mentioned that you can be lonely even when you are in marriage. So you need to work that out. But what do we do about that lump? You know that lump when you feel it, Elder, like there's something sitting there in your chest, there's this lump. And when there's something that you desire so much, you go to church and yes, you may encounter stigma there. And you daily face that lump in the throat. How can we deal with that? And how should we better cope with the brethren, or survive the brethren, as Kuda would say, in church? Because that is also another platform where one can encounter stigma, especially as the years add on and on and on. And the lump grows bigger and bigger.
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. I think, first of all, we need to know that God gives contentment. Each one of us was created with a void. God created us with a void, and that void is supposed to be filled by his presence, not men, not women, his presence. And it is when we mistake that void, that lump, for human companionship. Human companionship is an extra, it is needed, but a lot of people struggle to cope because they are generally not content with who they are, identity crisis, with what they have. Their love for materialism and looking for fulfillment in their jobs, in education, in their looks. That's why you have some people getting married and still very lonely, because you cannot solve lack of contentment using marriage. That formula breeds disaster. So I would say one of the ways to cope with the issue of the stigma of those who are single is to know that God did not create half beings. God created a man complete, women complete. And when we don't have that basic understanding that we are complete, we are going to be looking for completeness in human beings, and that won't happen anyway. Because every human being was, created complete. The second thing, which I think we also need to do, is that we need to know that sin has created unrealistic expectations in human beings. Because Satan has made it appear as if when you are married, I've heard people say, my other half, that is very strange for me. What is other half? Adam was never a half, he was full. So Satan has created this unrealistic expectation that when you are married, you have completed the equation. And it is in that attempt of trying to fill what is already full that you get frustrated. You know, I usually say to people, you cannot get in marriage that which you did not have when you were single. You can't. You need to bring that which you experienced already. And I think for me, the basis of happiness in marriage, among many other factors, is those who were content when they were single are likely to be very good in marriage. Because they will not be looking for that which can only be gotten from God. They will actually be helping. You know, when you get into marriage and you are content, you'll be helping the one who's not content prayerfully that they get to understand. The third thing that I'll say shortly is that, you know, there's intimacy with God. There's intimacy with God that can be achieved when you appreciate that being alone is an opportunity for you to explore levels of intimacy with God who does not break anyone's heart. You know, so we have women who position themselves strategically that they be seen. Is that wrong? There is nothing wrong. But I wish they would place themselves strategically for God's attention. Because, look, if you reach a level of intimacy with God, I can assure you that you'll get to understand that there is nothing external in this world that can make a person's heart joyous above that which God can give. And therefore, I would conclude by saying, if you are single and understand that God can give you contentment, expectations, whether brought by culture or whatever is around us, will not move us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elder, for that one. You know, as you were talking, this verse just kept playing in my head. Those who teach that it is wrong to marry, those who teach that it is wrong to marry. But of course, this is not what you're saying. You're talking about being content. But Happiness here just dropped us a comment, a question then. She's saying, what if you have been waiting for too long? In other words, what if you don't want to be content with being single? I think that's what's coming out. I'm going to direct that one at Kuda. What if you don't want to be content with being single? But Kuda, before you answer it, Matali had a hand up, so I'm going to give Matali an opportunity to speak, to ask your question. Please go ahead. You can unmute your mic and ask your question. Thereafter, we will tackle Happiness's question. What if you've been waiting for too long? What if I don't want to be content with being single? I think that
I wanted to planning ahead, planning your life. Okay. Now, how do you plan your life and knowing? Because, excuse me, I did not quite catch what you said.
Oh, that's fine. You can go ahead. We can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Sorry, it's the laptop. I was saying, I don't know if it's maybe the point of my life where I am, because like my age, I wouldn't really be like, I'm there at that point where I have to decide, is marriage for me, is marriage not for me? Like, how do you now plan ahead for your life? Getting married, or am I planning my life in singleness? I really don't know, because I'm like, if I'm going to own a house, will I be living alone? Will I not? Should I wait until that decision is made, or until I'm told that marriage is for you? Then I know, okay, I'm not going to buy myself a house. We're going to build a house together. Or is it like, I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life? I better get myself a house as soon as possible. So I don't know. I'm at that point where, how do you plan for the future?
Thank you so much for your question. Okay, how can I direct that one to you?
Okay, thank you. For those who don't know me, I'm 35 years old, never been married, no children. So I've also had that question around about 4 years ago because I had moved back into my parents' house, and I wanted to move out, and I wasn't sure if I should move out, really start building a life alone, and I prayed, and I prayed to the Lord, and I asked for wisdom. And essentially, what I did is I allowed the Lord to guide my steps, not necessarily within the context of whether I should do this and that because I'm getting married, or I will not be getting married, or because around the question of marriage, but just in general, God directing your steps. Should I study this or not? Should I go back home or move out? And we know how God speaks to us, right? In three ways, Ellen White says: through His Word, through the Holy Spirit, through divine providence. And so at that time, I was praying about it, and I got the direction to move out, and I started building sort of my own life. And I feel very comfortable around that simply because I believe it's how the Lord is directing me. And if He does bring anyone, then the Lord will direct us on how to blend the lives. So we shouldn't really be thinking about what we should do or not do because whether we might be getting married or not, especially if there's no one in the picture. But it should just be the normal question of whether God, I'm thinking of doing this, do you agree or not? And if the Lord said, let's go, if it's in line with His Word, the Holy Spirit is impressing you and doors are opening in line with that impression, let's move forward. And if somebody comes in the future, the Lord will help you again.
Thank you, Keho, for that one. I hope that answers your question, Matali. But yeah, sometimes, we do tend to plan our lives around certain people, certain events. So that was a very good question. And thank you for that one. Kuda, let's come to you and address Happiness's question. What if you have been waiting for too long? In other words, what if you don't want to be content with being alone?
Yes, thank you, Sonia. I've always been of the belief that if you're doing your best and your best is not working, then get better. Because when you get better, you get a new best, a better best. So the thing is, one beautiful thing, one piece of information that we have from Happiness's question that gives at least some peace to anyone listening is, whatsoever happiness is doing, is it working? And that's good, because it helps us know that if you want something that you've not currently already managed to get in your life right now, you need to change a few things. So I think it all boils down now to what are your goals? If your question is, I've been alone for a long time, maybe do I have the gift of Paul and should I be looking forward to that and can I move forward to that? Then that's a different question entirely. But if the question becomes that, no, like I don't want to be alone and what can I change? Then this is something that I feel even comes back to the church at large, because I feel that we haven't really, especially the youth, the way that we engage socially and the way that we are taught to pick partners and everything. I feel that sometimes some of the standards that are set, the way that they're communicated are so high that the people in church are not able to find actual human beings who are trying to serve God. And then when they do try to reduce their standards, they end up finding the sharks that are in church who've been waiting for years for someone like Kepo to reduce their standards. So this is the interesting place where we find ourselves now, whereby as a person now, from a personal level, I need to ask myself, or even ask the people close to me now, that, okay, fair enough. Is it my standards? Is it the way I dress? Is it the way I look? Is it the way that I've been behaving? Am I going to church programs? Because no one will find you if right after church you're going home. How can you be found if we can't even greet you? So those things, small changes that can be made. But the beautiful thing, the comfort we can take from all this, especially for Happiness, is knowing that whatever she'll be doing now is not working, and that's good.
Okay. So soon after church and you're gone. So how is that going to work out for you? Yeah, so I think, Lulu, we could work on this one. We're going to take the camera out one of these days, stand outside church, and just observe and interview those who are just running away from church soon after. So linger a little, find a reason to be there. Thank you, Kuda, for that one. But Vaja, based on what Kuda has just said, do you think that perhaps social media and Hollywood and all these things that people are watching could influence as well one's success rate, whether with regards to finding that partner? For example, I know most of the time, there's this thought that women need to be chaste because this is what we see happening in all these films. Women need to be chaste. What happens if the men also now are afraid of chasing after the women? Should maybe things change around, as could I say, change the practice, because we're running out of church and we're expecting you to come running after us and you're just watching us going home. What are your thoughts on that one?
You see, in all honesty, I would say yes. What is the social media and Hollywood in itself has given us this this view of how everything is supposed to play out that is slightly unrealistic, in that sometimes you're at church and you're carrying your Bible and all your spirit of prophecy books, and then you bump into each other, the books fall, then you pick up the books and look at each other's. It hardly happens like that. Maybe for Kuda it might happen because social interactions happen on his side, maybe. But all in all, we need to step back a little bit and understand that sometimes to follow God means to go according to his precepts and his will. Sometimes it will be you praying and praying and praying and praying, and then someone comes in a very suspicious way, and not suspicious, in a very awkward way that you never expected. You look at the encounter of Jacob when he meets Rachel. It's just the feeding of sheep. And now if you think about that and contrast it with Hollywood, you would not really think that these things are truly the same. And so with us as Christians today, we just need to be more realistic and think to ourselves, we are following God. Things may not pan out the same way it will be. For some, it might be the same because there are certain gentlemen that are extremely romantic. They come with those roses. They really come with the chocolate and all of these things. But sadly, some are not like that. And as a result, we need to understand that we might not be the ones who have this person who takes you on a date, and then when you come back, it's candles lighting the way all the way to the dinner date and so forth. So let us be Christians who pray for the best. And also, let us also be the people, if you have been, influenced by social media and all of these things, to see romance as one thing, be the person who gives that in opposed to being the person who expects that, because then the world just becomes a better place. If you can give your girlfriend a rose, that would be nice. Don't expect your girlfriend to always do everything. Don't expect your boyfriend to do everything. Be the one who brings the Hollywood to that person, and then everything should go well. I mean, if you look at the book of Songs of Solomon, you will truly understand that romance there is something else that we as Orthodox Christians do not really look into that much. So let's blend what God has given us holistically with what we know in this world.
That's fantastic, buddy. So are you saying that on a very good Sabbath, a young lady could just come with some roses for you? How I wish.
No. But these are the things that are supposed to happen. Sometimes it's not to say that we are to be boring Christians to love one another. But sometimes it would just be nice for the elder to preach a sermon and say, I gave my wife a bunch of roses last time. Do you get it? Realistic expectations. What is this? There's a new trend with the young people of today where in a concert where the girlfriend is singing, he walks up with a bunch of flowers. And that romance is actually appreciated. But sadly, not everybody will get it. But all in all, we just need to, as Elder Modavedi said, be content, because godliness and contentment is truly great gain.
Thank you so much for that one. Shay, let me come to you. And I'm thinking now of the singles who may be older in age from that perspective, but never been married before, just like you got married at 43, but there are others who are even older, but never been married before. And obviously, they're accomplished. They may have a house, they may have property, they may have cars, etc. And there could also be, that kind of society pressure for them to find love with someone who may not have accomplished so much. They happen to find love with someone who has not accomplished so much. And what advice would you give to such people, that they have found love, but the person they have found love with doesn't have as much as they do? And then I'm thinking also from the perspective that families could want to interfere with that. Church friends could want to interfere with that. Even co-workers could want to interfere with that. You could get comments like, why would you, a person who has a house, who has a car, who has everything, why would you settle for so and so who doesn't have all these things? Thank you, Lena.
Sonia, it's a very difficult question to answer, simply because we never, as human beings, are really able to judge people's motives. Some people will approach someone simply for economic reasons, for economic stability. They can be very romantic, especially when the man is in a financial position where he hasn't been able to provide for his future. And I have honestly seen many men who have been reckless financially, preying on women who have progressed and been diligent in their decisions through life. And I think it really isn't for anyone to judge. However, if your friends and your family are coming to you and highlighting these issues, it could very well be that God is warning you about a potential problem. And this is where desperation makes you vulnerable, both as a woman and as a man. But I think because of the stats in the church and globally about there being more women than men, particularly in the church, I think that we as women are more vulnerable. I heard issues like, I'm tired of being discontent. And let me just assure you, the more you feed that attitude, the more physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, and financial taxing it is going to have on you. If you are going to be angry at God and frustrated and in your singleness and not pray for that contentment, as the elder has shared with us, it is going to affect your health and well-being, whether you like it or not. Our God is a creator, and he's a creator of reality. He made us for relationship, but he can also, like with my desire for food or anything else, he can give us victory over the things that we cannot have and that we cannot have in the sanctity of his divine will. And so what I would like to encourage everyone is, in your singleness, God desires to prosper you in every possible aspect. And I love the three things that Keho shared this evening. I have also added another verse there that says, that scripture that says, there is wisdom in the counsel of many elders. If your friends, your loved ones, and the elders at church, if you seek their advice with regards to your relationships even, it can be a very powerful tool to give you insight and wisdom. Whatever you do, make your decisions as if you are single. And if God should choose for you to have a life partner, he will help you to navigate the challenges of having been single and now moving into marriage. Just something funny. I was married for we were married for about 3-4 months. And I went out shopping for groceries, and the shop closed at 7. And I walked out at about 7:05, and my phone rang, and my husband said, "Darling, I just need to know, are you okay?" And I was like, "Oh dear, I'm married. I now have somebody that I need to tell." And it's sometimes, getting married older it has huge adjustments. And it may not be as romantically ignorant. Sometimes as we get older, we realize the practicalities. We see that we can idolize Hollywood, but our standard is the holy word. It's not Hollywood. And God's desires for us are revealed. When we got married, my husband said to me, "You do know that marriage is a sanctifying platform." And I was like, "Oh dear, I have a lot of sanctification to take place," because we are selfish, sinful human beings. And so I would venture to say, before you rush in where angels fear to trod, do what Sister White says. Up your prayer game. If you were praying so much, make it 3-4 times as much. Spend that time in prayer. Seek the Holy Spirit's will, because we are warned in the spirit of prophecy that this decision is probably the greatest decision you can make for here and for eternity. A miserable marriage can truly impact you for eternity. And so my advice is also don't disclose your financial circumstances early in a relationship. That is not prudent. I've seen many young women flaunting it, and they're all over Facebook, and they are showing that they're traveling, they're here and there and everywhere. And they specifically have, through their advertising, become a target. So be aware, but most of all, be in prayer.
Thank you, Chef, for that one. You're talking, of course, about romantic scammers who are definitely on the increase indeed. Kuda, there's a question here. I think this one would be best for you. Let me direct it to you. The question says, why do girls always go for the bad guys? The brothers in church are always rejected because they're too nice or kind in general. They are being looked at as simps. That has led many of our brothers to change from good to bad, all in the name of sisters in church. Oh my.
You know, whenever I come up with a question like this particular question, I'm led to one simple question, which is, what makes you think that you're a good guy? Because you're not getting the girls. Is that what has made you good? How then can we truly know that you're a good question? Imagine you graduate from university, you've done like, what is this? Let's say this auto mechanic, the one of making cars. You studied it at school, but then you've never worked at BMW, at Mercedes-Benz. How then can we truly know your level of skill? You've never worked before. You could be a good worker, you could be a bad worker. So it's the same case. You've got people in church, guys in church, whereby they may not have the social skills for them to be able to connect with women. And because they've not had as many opportunities, they're fooled into thinking that they're actually good guys. No, you have no women. Because if you now had opportunity to date these women, now you end up being surprised. You are hearing John. John is such a good guy, always coming to church. John gets married 2 years later. He has got 2 children with another woman now. But is this not the same John who was good, or John now beating his wife at home? So the first question that you need to determine as a man for yourself is
You sound to be, yeah, but thank you for those valid points. Maybe Elder, you do need to organize that seminar where Kuda can share some tips on how to be good and how to get the ladies. But thank you for that one. There is a question here, though, Elder, I'll direct it at you. It says here, when you work on yourself as a woman and have properties in this country, it makes men insecure to even approach you. What do we do? So I just want a male's perspective on that. Does it indeed make men insecure the more women gain properties? And thank you, Sandra, for your question.
Yeah, no, I think, look, insecurity for me is not a male issue. You know, insecurity can be found in both genders. So when you are studying further, if people who are insecure, whether you are a lady, will feel threatened by your presence, not even your education, your presence. So I think we should aspire to do great things in life, buy properties, because it's as good as saying, I will not buy an expensive car when I go to my village because they will witch me. Then you keep using the bus. You see, you are the one who is insecure in that example, okay? Because you have so much fear that progress for you means it limits your opportunities for getting in a relationship. And if you operate on those parameters, you will literally amount to nothing, because when you want to study further, your consideration is the fact that I'll get a master's degree will throw men off. So what are you saying? Are you saying you'd rather then remain, renting a room so that you appeal to men? And for me, that will put you in trouble, because you are sending a message that you don't have anything when you have. And when you get married, then the reality kicks in that, wow, so why didn't you buy a house? You had, lots of money. And you need to be thinking of creating a story. So I think allow progress that God has given you to go on. It will, in fact, save you from men who are not honest. If a man is insecure because of a lady's progress, then you'll get in trouble when you get such a man, because that's why we have relationships where people pretend that they are very happy with highly educated women, but they are not. However, I also know, working at UNAM, that I've seen a general trend that the higher the level of education of a lady, the chances that she's likely not to get married, because we live in a patriarchal society where men have been traditionally using economic means against women. And now that women are coming up, majority of graduates in most countries are women. Affirmative action is pushing women above men in terms of equality, bringing them up. And what that is doing, it's moving the power shift to women. Look, it's an honest principle. Human beings generally use whatever they have against those they consider weak. And unfortunately, money has been used by a lot of people against others. Education has been used. So we also need to make sure that the higher the level of education, the more we accumulate properties, that God still helps us to remain humble. Because there are many who are married, who have education, who have money. They got out of marriage because they used whatever they accumulated as a bargaining tool in marriage. So I think our sister, buy the house, we will come pray for you, we fast together. The right guy will come with or without flowers, and we will celebrate in that big house. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, with or without flowers, even one rose, Elder, you can at least get one pink rose perhaps. But thank you for those points. But is it really a question of not having anyone, or could it be that we want certain people? Because I'd like to think that definitely there is someone who's showing an interest in someone, but it may not be the person that one would want to show an interest. But I'm going to come to you. They say that there's a tendency for people to always go for what they perceive to be beyond them. So men tend to be attracted to women that they believe they can't have. Women tend to be attracted to men that they believe are also above their league. Could that also be what is happening here? Is it really true that there's no one looking at you and no one who is carried? And as Vade gets ready to answer that one, unfortunately, we will be closing soon here for today's seminar, but you can still catch us tomorrow. So if you do have a burning question, this is your opportunity, but we will be closing soon. Vade.
Right. In all honesty, yes. You see, when God created humanity, when God created Adam, to be specific, he said, I will make him a helper meet for him. And how many times when we look at the word helper, we think to ourselves that it's someone who's lower, like a helper, a house help. But when one studies the Bible, you understand that the word helper, there's a connector. And that means one who is greater. What I'm saying is, when your car breaks down, you call a mechanic because they are better than you. They are the helper. Do you get what I'm saying? And so you are attracted to what is good. When God, refers to his relationship with Israel, he says, I am the Ezer connector to Israel. And so you want someone who can build you up, someone who can give you something that you don't have. And this is what we're saying. We're not saying that the person comes and makes you better. No. We're saying that the person complements you and not supplements you. And I'm saying when I say what is that supplement is the example of the lady has a big house and all of these things. If you have a big house, it's good. I'll also come with my big house. Then we have two properties. We rent one or we rent both. We go and live in the village, whatever the case may be. The point we're trying to drive to here is that you need to bring your best foot forward. And so for the ladies that are asking themselves, how do I navigate? Live your life as if you have 100 years to come, but understand that God should direct everything. And so to summarize everything that I've said, yes, you need to look for someone who makes you better. If you lack when it comes to devotion, don't stab yourself in the foot and get someone who's also not doing devotion. Get someone who can help you with devotion so that it helps. Do you get what I'm saying? If you can't sing, if you're one of those members who they try to silence during song service, get someone who can tell you, no, my sister, no, here, this is how we sing and this is how we do. So let us learn to develop ourselves in our singleness, so that when we get each other, we actually sit down. If you think you know the spirit of prophecy, it would be nice to hear from the person that you are with that, hey, you didn't actually read the 3rd volume of Testimonies to the Church. Do you get what I'm saying? It's nice. That's what I'm trying to get at. So let us learn to develop ourselves and get what we want. And at the end of the day, we'll sit there in a house and the children will be like, yo, I know that mommy is powerful, but daddy, that comment, and daddy just took it from a verse even. Do you get what I'm saying? Simplicity in what is this? Simplicity in appearance, but when this person meets you intellectually, they need to say that, I actually got someone normal here. The family should also say, yeah, man, we got someone real. Not these things where someone can't solve a simple problem.
Amen. I think next time you're just gonna give us a sermon, and then we'll be done with that one. Simplicity in everything. Careful. You know, as he was talking, I was wondering, do expectations change the longer it takes to get married? You may start off with expectation A of the person that you want to marry, but as time drags on, and of course, one gets older, and as he says, maybe even gets the big house. But I like that, you bring your big house, I bring mine, and we go to the village. That's a very nice one. But do expectations change the longer it takes to get married?
Yes, definitely. And for me, it changed 2 ways. I'll just read Romans 12, verse 2. It says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is the good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So essentially for me, it changed 2 ways. Number one, I think as I grew spiritually, I do believe in having a list, but the list became, I would like to believe, more biblical. So really looking for the things that the spirit of prophecy is really talking about, because you realize the older you get, how important those things really are. And you don't want to overlook that, especially as your peers get married. And in the 4th, 5th year of marriage, you see that some of those things that they've, spiritually, I think you really start hopefully thinking biblically in terms of relationships. And secondly, I realized practically, there are certain things that younger men can be excused from that older men can't, and vice versa. So, for example, when it comes to finances, I don't have a problem personally for somebody who earns less than me, especially taking into account that there are certain careers that just pay more, generally accountants, engineers, people who are in cybersecurity. And so if somebody comes and they're a school teacher and that's where God has pulled them in, that's their life work, great, that's fine. But sometimes you come across what I call stubborn entrepreneurs. They've been pushing this business 10, 15 years. They don't want to pivot. And someone will say, who's 45, but give me a chance. I say, my brother, a 25-year-old can say that, not you. You're 45. You should have changed in year 7 and realized, you see. So same goes with me. There are certain things that as an older lady, as I'm getting older, people can be more stricter on me than somebody who's younger. And I've accepted that. For example, financial stability. I've been working now for 10 years plus. Okay, so you would expect more stability than someone who's 22. So those things do definitely change. And I think also the last thing I would add, I also expect, it's more, the older you get, it's expected for you to be not as callous. So for example, a 40-year-old who impregnates somebody that they're not married to. For me, firstly, you shouldn't be having sex as a Christian, but really? You're 40, you don't know how not to make a child? You know what I mean? As opposed to someone who's 18 and 22. You know what I mean? So the older you get, it does become a bit stricter both ways, definitely.
Oh, wow, Keiko. Yeah, the older you get, the wiser you should be, according to Keiko. Things not making sense. We are wrapping it up and we are closing, but thank you for those insights that, yes, expectations do change. So it's not that people are not approaching you, but it could be the type of people that are approaching, because the expectations are also changing as time is also moving on. And there's a question here from Restoration Ministries that says, how do you measure their spirituality? Is it prayer? God gives the best. Well, that's a very difficult one. It's interesting because some people have gotten married to the Bible study people, the prayer warriors of the church, with expectations that when they get into marriage, they will be studied all the time, only to discover that the brother has also other intentions and activities. So what you may see before marriage and when you get into it may be totally different. But we have a question here that I have just received from Anonymous. Thank you so much for your question, Cher. I'll direct this one at you. It says here, I'm growing older, I'm working, great job, but no man seems to be coming my way. The problem is I want a child. And because I've made peace with not getting a man, I want to get a child through artificial insemination. What advice would you give, Anonymous?
Don't go there. I want to say that my experience, even with married couples on artificial insemination, is that it can be a very painful process, even when you're married. And I would personally counsel against that, especially because the primary cause of some of the crime and dysfunctional statistics we face in the world are simply because of single-headed households. If you look at the spiritual, economic, mental, emotional impact, yes, there are exceptions. Yes, God sometimes is extremely merciful, but when we go outside of the bounds of what God has said is good, we are truly walking on enemy territory. I cannot stress this enough. Unfortunately, we live in a world that is filled with sin, and it is very difficult for us to surrender our desires to God or to believe that He can give us the gift of contentment. I know that some cultures push women to have children, despite the fact that it isn't in a godly framework of the family that God designed it to be. And I have seen many young women regret and rue that decision to go outside the bounds of what God has ordained as the ideal. We do live in an environment where even the scriptures are twisted. You know, unfortunately, these are some of the realities that we face. In the original, the word that's translated helpmeet is ezer knecho. Now, in Hebrew, there are words that are related, and the relative word to that is etzer knecho, which is actually a limitation. And just statistically, to give you this, men are more successful financially and in their decision-making, globally, statistically, when they're married. Because ironically, the limitation of focusing on a wife and children and a family and building a solid future together empowers them to narrow in and be away from the distractions. And so I just want to give a bit of practical advice. Many men avoid marriage because their thinking is that, what if the next best thing comes along? What if I want to buy a car or a house or a motorbike and she won't allow that? And we as women can potentially make that more fearful for them. And so I can assure you it is a lot harder, especially in African culture, for a man to take on someone else's child. If you want to close that door even further to potentially having a life partner, then that would be one of the ways to do it. And we're just talking practicality here. I can also tell you that you will find yourself to a great extent ostracized in the church, as sad as that may be. And that particularly would possibly be more frowned on than if you had a relationship with somebody in the faith. And so I want to say that this type of challenge needs prayer, not only your own prayer, but asking others to come and pray with you and over you on this issue. I do just want to say we've got to be careful about trying to improve ourselves, because this can bring about a focus on self. Beloved, our focus needs to be on Jesus Christ. If you knew that Jesus was coming in the next year or two, which quite is possible, you need to be asking yourself, am I focused on being ready? Am I focused on doing what God wants me to do? Or am I feeding my desire and my own personal agenda? Because That is how Satan can reach us, through our desires and our emotions. Let us surrender these to God. Sonia, you're muted.
Thank you, Cher. Thank you for your comment as well. And yet we find that the desire to start a family, the desire to want to be with someone, the desire to have children, all those things were inherently put in us when we were created. So is it so wrong then to actually desire, to want to have those things? Cher, let me just get back to you on that one.
No, Sonia, they're not. Just like the desire to eat is a God-given gift. However, God can give us the ability to fast. I honestly didn't think I could fast until after I was married. I said to my husband, we're now one. I'll do the praying, you can do the fasting, because I was never successful. But God taught me to fast for 5 days. Literally fasting for 5 days. And I want to say that God can do the impossible with our desires and emotions. Yes, he created us for relationship. He's given us those inherent desires, but he can also help us. He can give us victory over them. He can help us master them, and he can help us manage them until he comes with his divinely appointed solution, not ours.
Thank you, Cher, for that one. We have a question here from Happiness. We are closing, we'll be closing shortly, very shortly, and we will then continue tomorrow, hoping to stick, of course, to the time that we have scheduled for the seminar. But Eldam Dabete, there's a question here from Happiness that says, so you just want to grow old alone? This is, of course, a follow-up to the previous question, but let's get your opinion coming in on that one. So you just want to grow old alone? Can you prove if it is a sin? So you just want to grow old alone? Can you prove if it is a sin to have? Very soon, it may be illegal to actually have a surrogate, but is it a sin?
Hard question. Let me say, you know, if you look at Abraham in the Bible, God had promised him to be a father of many nations. And right in the presence of that promise and blessing, he restricted Sarai from giving birth until they had passed childbearing age, very old, you know, and Abraham made the mistake which we should avoid. And that is solving a smaller problem by creating a big one. So by the time God allowed Abraham to have a child, it's the same God who came to him, bring Isaac in homes and houses, are producing children who end up in prison. So, but
to